So what's the biggest loser, the biggest fraud in the fitness industry? Now, before we get into this, guys, make sure you like and subscribe to stay up to date with the channel. So for years, and I mean years, millions of people have sat on their sofas every single week and watched contestants lose 10, 15, sometimes 20 pounds in a single week. And the message was crystal clear. If they can do it, so can you. You just need to want to work hard enough. So here's what the cameras never showed you. The abuse, the banned substances, the psychological damage, the contestants who were forced to exercise while injured and sick, and the permanent, irreversible biological destruction that happened to their bodies long after the finale aired and after the cameras went home. And hopefully by the end of this video, I think you're going to see just why that show was fundamentally wrong, but how it also applies to you and your efforts, and why everything it stood for might be the exact same reason you have struggled with your weight for years. So let's start with actually what happened on that show, because I want to be clear, I'm not here to sensationalize this. I'm going to give you the facts, and the facts are damning enough on their own. So number one was the extreme physiological damage. Now, contestants on The Biggest Loser were placed on calorie intakes between 800 and 1200 calories per day. Now, to put that into context, that is below the threshold that most medical guidelines consider safe for any adult, and at the same time they were exercising for between 4 and 8 hours every single day. Now, that is probably closer to being classified as torture than any sort of fitness program, and we now have the science to prove exactly what it did to their bodies, which we'll get into in a moment. Number two was the unsafe behaviors were actively encouraged. What came out after the show ended was deeply troubling. There were widespread reports of contestants deliberately dehydrating themselves before weigh-ins to get the numbers down. People were pushed to train for injuries and illnesses, and perhaps most seriously, there were allegations backed by multiple former contestants that banned stimulants and appetite suppressants were being supplied behind the scenes. Now, this just proves it's not a hell show. This was a ratings machine. Number three was a psychological exploitation. The show's format was built on humiliation. So trainers used what they called tough love, but what was actually, in many cases, verbal abuse and public shaming. Contestants were weighed in front of millions of viewers. They were mocked when they didn't lose enough. They were put through temptation challenges that were specifically designed around the idea that overweight people have no self-control around food, as if their struggle was a character flaw to be laughed at, not a complex medical psychological reality to be understood. And number four, it set standards that were not just unrealistic, they were dangerous. Every week, viewers at home watched someone lose 10 pounds and thought, why can't I do that? And when they tried a crash diet and lost 2 pounds in a week, they felt like a failure. The show normalized extremes and unsustainable weight loss as a benchmark. And it reinforced one of the most harmful ideas in fitness, that if you're not suffering, you're not trying hard enough. Now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever done your own version of The Biggest Loser? Now, maybe you didn't have the cameras on you, maybe you didn't have a trainer screaming in your face, but have you ever cut your calories down to almost nothing? Have you ever hammered yourself with cardio every single day, lost a stone in 6 weeks, and then watched every single pound come back on within 3 months? And when it did, when the weight came back, what did you tell yourself? I'll bet it was something like, I've got no willpower, I'm weak, I just can't stick to anything. Now, I hear this from men every single week, dads in their 40s and 50s who have tried everything, who have generally worked hard, who have generally suffered and put their bodies through it. And it's not because they've failed, it's not because they were weak, but it's because the method they used was broken. Now, look at this honestly. You skipped meals and survived on coffee. That's your version of the 800 calorie deficit. You ran yourself into the ground with cardio and no resistance training. That's your version of the 8-hour exercise day. You lost weight, then hit a wall, then rebounded. That's your version of the metabolic damage. You couldn't stop eating after 6 weeks of restriction. That's not weakness, that's your hunger hormones doing exactly what they were designed to do. And when it all fell apart, you felt ashamed. Just like those contestants did, standing on a scale in front of millions of people. The system was broken, not you. And I'm going to prove it to you with the science. So in 2016, researchers from the National Institute of Health did something remarkable. They tracked down 14 former contestants from season 8 of The Biggest Loser, 6 years after the competition had ended, and what they found should have made front page news. 13 of the 14 contestants had regained most of all the weight they had lost. Some of them weighed more than they did before the show started. Now, you might hear that and think, well, they just went back to their old habits. But here is where it really gets important, because the researchers didn't just measure their weight, they measured their metabolisms as well. Before the competition, those contestants burned an average of 2,607 calories per day, just at rest. just existing, breathing, keeping their organs running. By the end of the 30-week show, that had dropped to around 2,000 calories, which is perfectly normal seeing as they lost weight. But here's the part that stopped the scientific community in their tracks. 6 years later, with most of the weight back on, their metabolisms still had not recovered. Their resting metabolic rate was on average 704 calories per day below where it started, and roughly 500 calories per day lower than what you would expect for a person of their current size. Think about what that means in practice. Every single day for the rest of their lives, those contestants have to eat 500 fewer calories than a person of the exact same height, weight, and age, just to maintain their current weight. Not to lose weight, just not to gain it back. But why? Why does this happen? Why does the body fight back so hard? The answer in part is down to their metabolism, their hormones, and their body composition. When you crash diet, two critical hormones go haywire. The first is leptin, the hormone that tells your brain you are full, that you have enough stored energy, that you can stop eating. Under extreme calorie restriction, leptin levels crash, they plummet, and in the NIH study, 6 years later, they were still significantly lower than baseline, which means those contestants were walking around every single day with a brain that was screaming, "I'm starving. Eat everything you can find," even when they had plenty of body fat stored. The second hormone is ghrelin, the hunger hormone. While leptin drops, ghrelin goes up, and research shows that elevated ghrelin after rapid weight loss stays elevated over time and is one of the strongest predictors of weight regain. And on top of that, extreme calorie restriction suppresses the thyroid. Specifically, it reduces the conversion of the inactive thyroid hormone T4 into the active form T3. Now, T3 is essentially the throttle of your metabolic engine. When it drops, everything slows down. The NIH study confirmed the thyroid hormone levels were still lower than baseline 6 years after the competition. And also, a lot of their weight loss on the show was fat-free mass, which by the looks of it, they never regained, therefore meaning they had returned to near their original weight with more fat mass and less muscle. So let me be absolutely clear about what this means. When those contestants regained the weight, it was not because they were weak. It was not because they lacked discipline. It was because their environment was now set up for weight gain rather than weight loss. Their biology beat their willpower, and biology wins every single time. So what should have happened? What does the right approach actually look like, and how will it help you? Well, losing fat is achievable fast and slow. You can get lean, you can get strong, you can transform your body in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. I see it happen with men every single week. But the method matters enormously. And the method that the Biggest Loser used was almost perfectly designed to cause long-term damage. Let me show you the contrast. So the show put contestants on a 800 to 1200 calorie intake, while using a moderate deficit of 300 to 500 calories below your maintenance is enough to achieve weight loss and fat loss, without triggering the metabolic panic response that destroys your metabolism. The research on this is clear. Moderate deficit preserve far more muscle mass and metabolic rate than aggressive restriction. The show had no protein targets. Contestants were essentially burning muscle for fuel. The Built2Last method requires you to hit 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight every single day. That number comes from a landmark 2018 meta-analysis of 49 studies. It is the evidence-based ceiling for muscle preservation during a deficit. You feed the muscle and the muscle stays. The show used hours of cardio with no resistance training. Cardio spikes cortisol, burns muscle, and does nothing to protect your metabolic rate. The Built2Last method uses resistance training at least twice a week as the non-negotiable foundation. That is all the research says you need to do to send the signal to your body to keep muscle. Muscle is a metabolically active tissue. The more of it you have, the higher your resting metabolism stays. The show ignored sleep entirely. We now know from a published study that sleep-deprived dieters lose 60% more muscle and 55% less fat than those getting adequate rest on the exact same calories. Sleep is not a luxury, it is a biological requirement for fat loss. The Built2Last method treats it as one. And finally, the show used shame, fear, and humiliation as motivation. The Built2Last method is built on something completely different. Sustainable habits, identity-based change, and the understanding that you are a man with a job, a family, and a life, not a contestant on a television show. The difference is not just about the numbers, it is about philosophy. The Biggest Loser treated your body as the enemy, something to be punished into submission. The Built2Last method treats your body as a system, something to be understood, to be supported, and to be worked with. One of those approaches creates permanent metabolic damage and a lifetime of fighting your own biology, and the other one builds a body and a life that actually lasts. If extreme diets have never worked for you in the past, I want you to hear this clearly. It was not your fault. Your biology beat your willpower, and that is not a character flaw, that is physiology. physiology. That is what happens when you put your body through a protocol that was designed for television ratings, not for long-term health. So the question now is, what are you going to do differently? Because the method exists, the science is clear, and men in their 40s and 50s, dads with busy lives, demanding jobs, not a lot of time, are using it right now to lose fat, build real strength, and feel better than they have in years. If you want to understand exactly what is holding your health and fitness back right now, I want you to take the free Dad MOT, which is linked below this video. It takes a few minutes, it's completely free, and it will give you a clear picture of where you are and what needs to change. Stop working against your body, start building something that actually is built to last. I'll see you on the next one.